Hi, sorry. Yes, I wanted to ask about, have you thought about incorporating mixed reality, like emotion, for example, that might be more intuitive or more exciting to a child with ADHD? Would that actually then cause more distraction, or is that potential for exploration in terms of making that a game that's going to get them in there and keep interested because they're doing something motion-wise as well?
That's, I think, definitely there's potential. I just thought that Sphero ball looked like a fantastic tool as well. So I think there's lots that we can do. I think we've always done at the moment is we've really transferred something that's essentially a desktop sort of clinical test to something that is implementing a fairly standard psychological test called, well, AX test, or stop, in this case, go, no go, or indeed stop signal test. So there's three main tasks that we've implemented. And we've got to be a little bit careful not to stray too far from the parameters of those tests as well. And I've mentioned this in the paper a little bit. We had to keep the hours looking quite similar. It would have been nice to have one with looking perhaps more awkward than the other one, but actually if you start making them too different, then that affects the test. So we've got this, it is related to your question, which is, I think we have to think how well we could control that from a cognitive psychology point of view if you would start taking it out and having more, I suppose, outdoor variation. If I've answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks so much, Mike. I think if people want to ask Mike questions on his presentation, there's going to be a break in a bit, so you can grab him then.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll be here tomorrow as well.
Okay, so can we move on to the next presentation, which is from Dominic Holmes. Have you got your radio, Mike? Okay, so Dominic's got to get wired up first of all. To hide anywhere to do that. Get behind the screen. Get behind the screen. Okay, so Dominic's presentation is about a rehabilitation game model for personalised exercise. Over to you.
Okay, so I'm Dominic, and I've worked towards a PhD in personalised and adaptive rehabilitation to encourage engagement in physiotherapy. And this works towards the personalisation part of this paper. So we know games do have a potential to increase adherence due to the way that they're designed, using a number of design principles and core game mechanics. And those games that are designed, the researchers and the game designers have seen there's variations in the way people play and the way they're motivated. And then we look at behaviour change as well, so changing someone's behaviour towards rehabilitation games initially and continuously throughout the game. So how we do this is we develop a new way of designing and assessing interactive rehabilitation systems that are tailored to a user's personality, and it includes three aspects: the engaging motivating factors of games. So we essentially play a profile for specific players. Then we look at game mechanics, where we create gameplay targeted to those specific players, and then we introduce behaviour change techniques to look at put those techniques in to initially engage them and continuously engage them in rehabilitation. So we know games can be engaging and fun, and that's the key reason why they're used in rehabilitation. And games can be broken down and understood by their game mechanics. And by breaking down these game mechanics, we understand how we can create new gameplay and specifically target rehabilitation or particular players for rehabilitation. And researchers and game designers have done this, such as Stephen Bjork, David Perry and Shell. Gamification is quite a popular term at the moment, and it looks at using game elements in non-game contexts to make them fun. So we apply the motivational characteristics of games to non-game contexts such as education, for example, and other types of training. And we look at games. I'll take that back because it's distracting. Games. All the researchers have looked at games and sort of broke them all down into game mechanics, as I said earlier on. Looked at the variations of the way people are motivated and the way they are interact with games. Bartle was one of the first ones to do these classified player types. And more recently, as Markowski, he creates 6 player types that he sees in the gamified system and how they may be motivated by the red X out there. And then he looks at games in specific and looks at the game elements that may motivate that particular person. And behaviour change then, we looked at the new and more recent one, behaviour change wheel. And it's used to analyse and implement behaviour change interventions. And it came about through a systematic review of 19 other frameworks. So it sort of encompasses aspects of those. At the core of the behaviour change wheel is the green thing here, which is capability, opportunity and motivation. And it highlights that behaviour is part of an interactive system, including capability, motivation and opportunity. So for example, in order to change a behaviour, one or more of these need to be changed. Let's take an example. I want to cycle to work. I have the reason why I want to do it, the motivation to do it, is because I want to get fitter. I want to be a safer environment. I also have the capability because I learned from a young age. But I don't have opportunity because I don't have a bike or I can't afford a bike. But then recently this cycle to work scheme was introduced, so now I have access to a bike. So now I can actually change my behaviour. So we looked at the core aspect here, and then we look at the intervention functions. And these are ways in which to direct or change one of the core components of capability, opportunity and motivation. And they're very general or abstract. And the behaviour change wheel has a taxonomy where it gives more detail on what ways to approach and change the common components or capability, opportunity and motivation. So our modelling that we've created from those 3 aspects, so we look at the motivation characteristics of games, so we look at player types, what they like, what they dislike. We look at game mechanics of what makes gameplay, and look at the behaviour change wheel, particularly the behaviour techniques. The player types then, as we look at Markowski's player types, and Stephen Bjork's player types, he's 295 game mechanics that he lists, which is pretty comprehensive. So we started with that, and then we looked at the behaviour change wheel, the taxonomy here, of ways in changing people's behaviour. So relationships and how this actually comes together is, at the core is the game and the game mechanics. And what that does, it creates gameplay specifically for a player type. And then behaviour change wheel then is organised and grouped to relate to game mechanics. Thus then the behaviour change wheel is related to the player types. So let's take an example of some gameplay that may happen. So the player interacts, which is our dynamics with the game and game mechanics, and we notice he's interacting more as an exploration game mechanic over the rest. So we know he could be a more free spirit. And as he explores more, he unlocks new areas, or he gets meaningful rewards such as binoculars to explore even further into the scene. And that contributes to our feedback and user experience or aesthetics, but at the same time promotes a behaviour change. So we look at material rewards in this case. So he's changed his behaviour and he's thinking, the more I explore, the more rewards I'm going to get. So I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep being more engaged. So the rehabilitation game model we've designed can be used in two main ways. As a design tool to communicate new rehabilitation game ideas and create effective, fun gameplay suited to personalities. And as an assessment tool to evaluate existing rehabilitation games and purely entertainment based to see if they're suitable for rehabilitation. So as an assessment tool, we evaluated 5 commercial games and 3 relevant rehabilitation games. It's very small because the amount of time it takes to actually analyse these, because of the observing gameplay takes a long time. So, so we chose the 3 rehabilitation games. There was more out there, but they were only the ones that included in the inclusion criteria, that there had to be research done in that rehabilitation game, and there had to be some access to observe gameplay. So the evaluator then can observe video gameplay and know all game mechanics related to their personality in the RGM model. So the results of the commercial game, we see that all games exhibit at least one dominant user type or player type, and there was a strong emphasis on the achiever type. And there was only one game from the evaluation was StarCraft that exhibited all user types, and that you would expect that to some degree because StarCraft is a real-time strategy game, so it in fact encompasses a variety of players. A rehabilitation game then is only showed 2 types of players. So achiever, which represents a focus on achievement or challenge-oriented rewards, and a player type, which to a lesser degree of the achiever type, and it highlights extrinsic rewards that are independent on where the person progresses or not. And the Limbs Alive, it was like a circus game where they had to do acrobatics and throw things. It came out with the highest RGM profile. In conclusion, then, is the commercial and rehabilitation games exhibited a strong emphasis on the achiever user types, which naturally you would expect to some degree because games are designed to support the player and develop skills to advance through the game. And rehabilitation games were well designed, but had a narrow design focus on achievement-oriented rewards, which could be argued that is less suitable for rehabilitation, because there could be problems dealing with failure to progress and stopping the player to engage. And it also could be argued that a gamer population more interested in challenges, whereas rehabilitation, people in rehabilitation are more engaged in a broader system, such as including social and creative factors. So in terms of social, patients may not value as much to see the family and friends, so adding that aspect of communication to games, that may become more important. So the future of the RGM then is to expand it further in all 3 aspects, both the player types, more game mechanics and more behaviour change techniques, and also to analyse more games. And maybe after we've done that, then look at the game mechanics and narrow them down towards ones that will be suitable for rehabilitation. So, as well as working on the RGM, at the same time we've been working on interface design to play it. So essentially you'll see the user just in a simple scene picking objects, and what we do is we measure its performance using Fitts law. So its movement time is based on how far away the object is and how big the object is. And as we keep monitoring his performance, we introduce different aspects such as cues. So we've got shading there, which is our visual cues, we have audio cues, and we have tactile cues. And then we also have spatial awareness, so we introduce the Oculus And the Oculus allows us to see how well they perform if they're more aware of their environment or not with the Oculus on. And then we also look at cheating. Well, I call it cheating. It's deliberate and subconscious cheating, where are they using their arm but are they using their back as well to reach objects. So we need to detect that and see what we can do with that whenever we go into making adaptive user interfaces for specific players. Thank you. Any questions? I didn't even reach it.
Any questions for Dominic?
Yeah. I saw you were the person because I've seen the behaviour change. Yeah.
I've got 2 questions actually. Am I allowed to do that? Which behaviour change techniques did you embed in the system?
We haven't actually embedded this as sort of a framework for whenever we go forward. This is what we'll be using whenever we actually go on and actually design the system.
Okay, no problem. And the second question was, obviously, there's quite a long pathway in terms of rehabilitation for a stroke patient. So there's someone who's just come right out of acute care from having their stroke, and then there's the longer pathway. How do you see this game having a degree of flexibility to make it appropriate for all patients?
That's the interface design there. We see we use measure its performance in real time, and we adapt to the performance in real time using the data from the performance.
Okay. And have you got any expert panel in place that's going to test this game?
Have we got what, sorry?
Like an expert patient panel in place that's going to test this?
We're working with a group of people at the moment, just sort of introducing ourselves, and hopefully we can use them in the future to test the system.
Okay, thank you.
And question here.
Thanks. Yeah, so I was interested in the model that you used for the behaviours, which I mean I've not read a huge amount about this, but it seems to me it comes from a sort of categorising gamers into 6 groups. I wondered sort of the rationale for choosing that, because it's health related, whether there are other models like health belief models that might actually inform the way that somebody
do you mean the behaviour change?
Yeah, the behaviour change model, because it's sort of, I suppose, based on the sort of gamer type or player type model. There are other sort of more health psychology models, aren't there? I just wondered if you'd examined some of those in terms of which model you might to choose to put in, as the behaviour component of your model.
No, I haven't actually assessed that. The behaviour change model does look at those other frameworks, but I haven't actually looked at those sort of things, and that's good.
I'd just like to add, I think it was really interesting that you actually looked at those games and to see which sort of behaviours were being tested or featured in those games. I think that was really, really interesting. Thanks.
While you're thinking of some more questions, can I just ask you a question to follow on from that?
Mm-hmm.
The 6 categories, when you matched them onto the games, there were some players that didn't really have any games that suited them.
What do you mean, sorry?
Your matching of the types of players to the game characteristics.
Yeah, the game mechanics,
Yeah, there were some players that really they didn't have any games that suited them.
Oh, they do. It's just I had to narrow it down for the size of the model.
Okay.
You know what I mean? We include about the 295 types, so they all have a vast amount of game mechanics that would relate to them.
So can you give us some idea of, say, the philanthropist? What sort of game suits them?
It'd be more, you'd be sharing resources and stuff like that. So allow maybe an online game, so you have your friends stuck on a level, you give them some resources or give them advice on what to do next and to help them, so those sort of things.
Oh, okay. So there are games to suit everybody?
Oh yeah. Okay. There's your imagination is unlimited when it comes to games.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, we're finished really early, and I'm not sure whether you can get your tea or coffee yet, but we'll break now if there's no more questions, and reconvene at 3:30 once you've had something to drink. Thank you.
The break of the last session, yeah, the phone.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
How many people we've lost this summer? It's always that post-lunch thing. The number of
Yeah, the evening's not too bad.
That's really good, isn't it? Do we have that in the lab?
So Steve's been doing it at home.
interesting to come up and listen to it, keep us right.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's it.
Drives around, rolls around, splashes.
Next year we'll get that to
Steve's also doing things like augmented reality, using the tablet. You develop more of an environment around to drive traffic around.
So how do you charge it? It's not like that. So how does it charge? Sensor? Actually, technology.
Yeah, these are my stalls. This one, we've got 5 Lego designs at one stage, motors and figures together in different ways. Then we've got a whole load of enthusiast design ones. So these are bespoke enthusiast designs. They provide more of the capability and this approach so this one, it did have, it got not very many sensors, but ion sensor, light sensor. So this one, the light sensor was strapped on the back printing in the ground, so you could do light on but then that, the function of that didn't move it to this, so I moved it, but you could switch around. So now he's like right there, and do something other than right there. So they're dancing. But for example, most are reverse in orientation to the standard. So if you have a standard controller, this one will tend to go forward, so we tend to go forward, we tend to go left, So you need to, and because you can build them in all kinds of configurations,
but yeah,
you're going to get, well, what you expect it to take, build this like well, we're doing our languages. I think it's junior.
I mean, what Lego is I know for a fact my son is 10 and put that together without
no, it's census game.
I made one so I'd say it's probably 8.
These are the retail versions. Apparently there is an education version which has an additional sensor and has rechargeable battery. These are rechargeable battery. So if you are considering getting one, the education Sphere is for 100 quid. And that's the first kind of toy.
And then you can get my Star Wars on as well.
Just whether
well, I mean, the pocket code, you can control next up with NXT, which is the previous generation of Mindstorm controller, but not the EV3, which is this generation. So you've got pocket code, which potentially could give you that interface with with these robots. One of these is still so the ion unit can be used in different modes. It can be a proximity sensor, it can be a beacon, this one is a beacon which now detects and travels towards. This is on a program. He made him Gangnam Style when he took it right now. So the equivalent of right sensor Gangnam Style.
But what it does
We will be doing, well,
one of the teachers at King's
no, yeah, it's really nice. It's really
and she, I met her once and she's
essentially, the reason we're looking at these spots, those costs are 4.5 grand, and putting those into spots is not true. What it's can't afford. These costs are 250 quid, so you can have one more chance to get into school, much more limited range of functionality. So what we're looking at trying to do, we know the sort of stuff we can do with that, and work out to replicate it. So this sort of level of and perhaps utilise some of the sensors on mobile devices that actually controlling using Google Speech on the tablet. So, you know, basically ways to similar ways to how they can utilize kids in schools using the app.
Yes, survey
Which ones?
It's all about
Is this a real
okay, right? And receiving feedback from the sensors. There are programming environments for all of these environment where you
oh, right, okay, yeah, I get it. It's more like the basic one that
So is the point that they learn say something to you and then they wanted to do something to reward the student and they wanted to listen for a particular reaction to sense the correct thought and press. If you can implement those simple interactions in a very small way, I would say that the students have that road and they just want to test and then you can take it out
engaging one.
Out of his way.
So £75 that's 2 weeks in the hotel.
yeah, brilliant, yeah. So schools in general.
He's struggling.
No, like holiday.
Benefits from studying to steam using arts textiles thing, but it would be computation from computational thinking to computation making. It was playing intuitive build. It's a basic relationship.
Andy, David, I need to tell you something about.
What's that?
Really also got the hugging ceilings and things, which are very much more about these being using them in people Actually, that was made for this one. He's not more of a No, that was actually probably my lady recorded that I understand because I'm human. So that tablet. So if I show you so this is the environment that comes with the robot program.
So if I go that way, you'll crash.
Let's say they follow up with Limbs Alive. Did you realise who wrote their software? Very sadly, it was Pitbull that produced that software. You know, they went bust. And some of the people have gone to other companies, but they can't use that software. They can't adapt it. They've got to start all over again.
An intermediate.
No. But I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? We're outsourcing stuff all the time.
So are they actually going to get somebody else to do it for them?
I don't know what they're doing, because the testing's all finished now and the data analysis, they're just doing some commercialisation, and the funding finished in July, and we've still got to sort of wrap up the final reports and things. But I think if they want to then roll it out again, they're going to have to come up with another solution to yeah, so when I saw that, I was thinking, what do you know about Limbs Alive that I don't? It wasn't you didn't work for Pitbull all the time.
Okay, so we should be controlling it. So, I'll just show you the equivalent one in here. We changed the gangman, so the dancers did just do the dance, to change the gangman so that he could control each function. So choose that. Which one right hand and hold down? So you touch his right hand.
Can I encourage you to come back to your seats, please? We're going to resume this session. Do I get bossy? Could you take your seats, please, because we're going to resume the next session. Okay, thank you very much for obeying those instructions. The next presentation is quite unusual in the sense that I think many of us are quite remiss in ignoring users who have visual impairments or indeed no vision whatsoever. So I'm really pleased to be able to welcome Orly Le Havre, who's going to actually talk about an application that addresses the needs of people that have no vision. So, Orly, perhaps you'd like to come here. And she's going to talk about STEM learning of complexity via sonification for people who are blind.
Thanks. I mentioned one thing, it's not about health application or something like this. I was put here, I don't know what is the order of the session, but I'm going to speak about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics learnings by people who are blind. And this work was done with my students Noah Khachbi and Vadim Talis. I'm from the School of Education at Tel Aviv University. So most of the students, the blind students I'm going to speak of, they are integrated in regular schools. They need to have the regular examination, to attend the regular curriculum. There is no special curriculum for blind. But In the other hand, most of the curriculum, most of the science curriculum and others, it's based on textbooks that most of the time there are plenty of visual interface actually there. Images, chart, videos, and others. So the question, what blind person can do, blind students can do. So what we done, just before in one of the sessions, someone mentioned the net logo model. So what we're doing here is actually, we are based on something that was developed by Uri Velensky in 1999, and other colleague, Sharon Levy also. And there is here the net logo model application, and we had to hit an audio feedback. So why are you using the net logo? So it's low-cost technology. It transmits visual information to auditory information, and in a few minutes I'll ask you to close your eyes and to try to, not to sleep, but trying, although this is the time, trying to understand what you see. We can call this presentation and this technology maybe hearing the image. So we are using sonification of dynamics environment. There are all the time changes. It's not a static image. Sonification of variables and events. Agent-based net logo computer model. And the issue that we are targeting here in this research is to understand or to teach the blind actually what is the behavior of a gas particle in a model. So now I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. This is the visual interface for visual people. So those who want to be for a few seconds blind, so if you can close your eyes, and we're going to hear sounds actually. Each time that there is a new voice, a new sound, I will tell you what it is, okay? So please, we can play it. This is for when we hit the wall, sorry. This is when two gas particles hitting each other. This is when we spread more particles to the model. Continues. Wait, okay. Now you hear the velocity. Now I'm going to build a wall inside the model. So what you're going to hear, it's about a small part of the room that actually the room is divided into two and then it's open. Now I'm going to have a sonification for the pressure, okay? It will come, it's still running? It's come to the end or? Ah, okay, so maybe I took out the pressure, it's okay. So you can open your eyes. I'm sure that it was, for most of you, that are not familiar to hear things all the time and to have a cognitive process as a result of using only the audio feedback. It was maybe a little bit difficult to concentrate for long term. What are the sounds that we are hearing? So this is kind of the things that we are trying to work with blind to improve this kind of skills. So this is the model actually that we use with our subject. And the question that we ask is, what scientific conceptual knowledge and system reasoning were learned as a result of listening to the complexity using this interface? And actually, if it's improved, we had pre and post test, and this is one of the questions that we asked. The second question that we asked, what scientific knowledge was learned as a result of interaction with the Listen to Complexity interface by people who are blind? So we had 10 subjects, 5 female, 5 male. And what I'm going to show you, present to you now, it's about one subject. It's a pilot case study. A woman, 34 years old, who is eventually blind. She's congenital, a late blind. And when we reached her in the beginning of the research, she said, I didn't learn science at school. I don't think that I can work with you because I don't have any knowledge, actually. And she actually tried to put herself in a side and not to take a position in this research. And we're trying to convince her. And later on, in the last slide, I'll show you what she said in the end of the research. So the variables were scientific conceptual knowledge of contained gas particle. It's the particle collision to the wall, the number of particles in the model, the temperature, the volume, the pressure. I'm going to skip it to come to the end. The method we used, the Listen to Complexity learning materials that I show you just now, the application, background questionnaire, pre and post test, and research protocol. The learning materials for this research, it was actually, we translate everything to Braille and to text-to-speech. They needed to decide which platform actually can work for them. All the images in the curriculum, in the cited curriculum, were transferred and adapted before to tactile images, so they can actually touch them and understand what it is. The connected chemistry curriculum, we had 62 open-ended questions and 144 multiple choice questions. The curriculum was on modeling a bicycle tire in the beginning, so we connected real world to the curriculum, what we're going to learn and how it actually can help them in the real world. So we brought a bicycle tire and they need to pump it up. Experiments with particles, kinetic molecular theory of gas, learning about pressure, learning about changing pressure, diffusion, about this process, and we hand with atmospheric pressure and gravitational force. So the process was, we worked with each participant, we worked individually. The research consists of 10 sessions, so 60 minutes each. So we had it for 5 to 8 weeks. Background questionnaire, it was the first, then pre-test, then the connected to chemistry curriculum, and the post-test. So what we have here is the result of the pre-test compared to the post-test. On the open questionnaire, it's the first 3 columns, and the multiple choice questionnaire. And you can see in the hand, it's the sum, it's the final mark. In the pre-test, she got 46% success in 46% of the question, and actually it's almost the double in the post-test after she learned it by the sonified learning application. She got 88%. And she succeeded also, you can see, in the open question and also in the multiple. So sometimes people can say in the multiple, it's by choice. But here you can see with the open questionnaire and also in the multiple choice question, she succeeded better in the post-test than when we compare it to the pre-test. When we try to see on each activity what she succeeded to learn, so we can see here that in model bicycle tires, it was 77%, but I'm not going to read all, but you can see here in the last column that she succeeded in most of the questions that she asked on each chapter of the curriculum. So there is a learning that actually happening here as a result of the sonified information that she got in this application. So at the first session, as I told you, she had a lot of concerns not to succeed because her lack of knowledge. She said all the time, I'm not suitable for this research, and she continued to say it. During the study, I commented that she understood and loved the learning subject and find it interesting not only in the science, but in everyday life. And this is something that we are ignoring most of the time, because usually with science, we said the blind people or students, they doesn't need this curriculum. They are not going to use it, or they are not going to be a professor of science later on their life. But I think there is a core of knowledge that we need to transfer to our students, also to the blind students. She said later on, I was pleased to participate in this research in spite of all the concerns that I had. The subject is interesting and the integration of the software helped me to understand it. When we finish and we conclude this research, so we start to figure out what is going to be the next stage research actually for us. And one of the things that we said, as a result, that most of the time science is not taught in regular school, integrated school that blind are study at. So the question is, if we are taking regular curriculum, textbook, and adapt it to the needs of the blind, so are we going to see the same thing that we saw here before the pre and the post, going to see the same gap? And this is a research that we're doing now. One of my students, she bringing and she working individual with subject, blind subject, and teach them the same curricular, but only with Braille and text-to-speech. And the question is, maybe if we only are going to approach them with the right curriculum, without the sonified, maybe it's going to work the same. So it's actually, maybe for some of you it's going to target, so why sonified? This is a question to ask. To see if it can work only through text-to-speech maybe, and Braille curriculum without this sonified. So maybe in next ITAG I have the comparison between those two groups. So this is the next step that we are going to do. Thank you. It was very quick, I told you. If you have questions, this is my email. I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Orly, thanks very much. Have we got any questions? While you're thinking up questions, can I just ask you a bit more about some of the learning scenarios? So you gave us an example, obviously, of the audio track. But what was it like for the learner? Did she have a verbal commentary? Was there a recorded commentary, or did she have to?
There is a Braille. It's like a book, a textbook, but it's in Braille or text-to-speech. And there is also emboss, tactile figures. And whenever she needs to interact with the Listen to Complexity application, she's stopping reading, and then the assistant, the researcher actually, running the application as the subject asked for. So for example, if we are speaking in the beginning about the behavioral particles, so one of the things that we asked about the behavior of particles, in a model. So one of the things that we put, if there is an impact, when we're putting a lot of particles at the same model, if it's going to impact the particle when it hits the wall, or particle hit another particle. So actually the participant is asking to add more particles, and this is the way that we're adding more particles by pushing the button. And then they're hearing what's happening actually in the model. So we can add as much particle that the participant wants, and as they ask to. And so one of the questions can be why they don't do it individual. This is also a good question. And not, we thought to do it, but we saw that it's taking a lot of time till we're going to develop the individual, the blind application that only blind can actually work with. So this is, we stop it, and we were afraid that it will take us a lot of time. So we stop it, and it's not the blind that actually use it, it's the researcher as the blind actually asked for it. So he asked for which kind of event, he asked what of kind of sonification feedback he want to hear, and the researcher is pressing the button, but it's totally controlled by the participant.
And so they can then ask to do as many repetitions as
absolutely,
they want.
as they want.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So they can repeat, they can stop, they can ask for only to hear, for example, the particles hitting the wall and the velocity, to hear how one interferes the other, if at all, or to hear the particles hitting other particles and to see how it's actually, if and all, it's there is any connection with the temperature, or if we are putting a small model, like the room, the model is going to be shrink and a smaller one, as I did before. I put a wall inside the model, and actually how it's going to impact the velocity or the temperature or the pressure of the particle inside the small room. So all those kinds, this is why we call it a dynamic model, because all those kinds of events and you can change according to the learning curriculum and according to the participants what you want.
But it is very heavy on programming time.
No, not at all.
You mentioned time was a limitation.
The time was a limitation to develop an application that will run by the participant.
Okay.
But no, if someone wants to run to see it, I can run it in my computer like tomorrow morning.
Okay, there's an offer for you.
Thank you very much.
Well, hang on a minute, I've asked the question. Are there any other questions? Well, okay, there's just one more thing I was going to ask you. In your abstract, you mentioned the woman had only recently lost her vision.
Yes.
Do you think there would be a difference in people who
congenitally blind and late blind
used to responding to and understanding auditory information?
Yes, what we try to find here, if there is a difference between late blind and congenitally blind understanding. We didn't find differences. We didn't find also difference between female and male. So those kinds of things, maybe because of the measure of the group was only 10 subjects, so maybe because of this. From other research that we done between congenitally blind and late blind, one of the things that we found when we done the virtual environment for blind, so we found out that congenitally blind, when they thinking or describe in their cognitive map after working in virtual environment, they are used only the auditory feedback as a landmarks. They're not really imagining the information in a visual way. But in the other hand, the late blind, they're using really the figure. They're hearing, for example, the words window, but they see the window. So they think visually. This is different from the congenital blind. So but here we didn't find differences. In this kind of research, we didn't find differences between late blind and congenitally blind in understanding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've actually finished early, but I think because we've got to make sure that we are synchronised with next door, we'll have to wait for a bit. No, that's okay. Perfectly all right. So you've got 10 minutes, you can just talk among yourselves and we'll get ready for the next presentation on the hour.
Okay, you're going to jump to the front. You're speaking on
driving.
speakers.
Yeah.
Roving mic, radio mic. I see, if you walked all over the place, you're going to hang on to a lectern.
It's here. It's here.
Yeah?
Yeah, alright. We just got appointed today, so it's today.
It's Dave. Everyone was confused at the beginning. Everyone's going, but I can't see my screen. I'm an academic, I can't speak without PowerPoint. Yeah, I'm okay, well, I have my glasses on. I haven't got one. Actually, because I'm short-sighted, I have my glasses on. I just can't see anything there. What's that?
Yeah, people have been doing that.
Yeah.
We have to have more time to have the news. The American presidents have.
Yeah. Everyone used to think Reagan had a brilliant memory, didn't they?
Yeah, and even that comes out as it's focused on the music. I mean, if it jabbed, you just keep saying the same thing.
Well, it's actually good to like go to Rose and we have Rose to the sliders to develop the immune cancer communities, so she's going to be here. So it makes sense to wait before us. No, it's good. I thought you were going to go straight to AIDS. That makes more sense. But you came to the NVA to do check because
Yeah, that's true. She knows she got silly on it.
Yeah, it was literally just the direct
Ja, wenn ich chance for irgendwie. As good as you can. You've got to. Right. I'm sorry, I'll start rooms and How do you get the joy? Yeah. Oh, yeah, but navigate. So once you have the app, you can automatically fill it. You want me to get all purple.
Really cool. I didn't know it was over there, but I said, yeah, it could be good for me.
Why do you sit there and do one?
Yeah.
No, sit where you want. Rosa, where you've got this slide to follow, so you can sit down there, I can bring you up if you want.
Even if I
just sort of
Okay, can I ask you to come back to your seats, please? Okay, we've got quite a few presenters for the next one, so I won't list them all. But the next presentation is about the co-design of a prostate cancer serious game for African men. Over to the first presenter.
Okay, thank you for coming. This is really going to be a presentation of quite a few people. So let's see how it works. We haven't practiced, so we're going to do this by the seat of our pants. So we're going to talk about the co-design of a prostate cancer game for African Caribbean men. First of all, we looked at the literature, and we know around 40,000 men every year contract prostate cancer. And actually, 1 in 4 black men will get prostate cancer at some point in their lives. And this might be due to genetic factors that we don't understand, a higher incidence rate, especially to do with family history. And we know that men are not seeking medical advice in a timely manner, and this increases mortality rates. We know that early intervention and early detection cuts the risk of prostate cancer by 29%, cuts the risk of dying from prostate cancer. So early intervention is incredibly important. We know that barriers to timely intervention include an unawareness of risk and symptoms, fears of possible consequences of treatments, and interestingly, trust or mistrust of the healthcare services. All of these things can affect early presentation and diagnosis, and therefore impact mortality and morbidity. So early presentation of the people at highest risk is incredibly important. We know that after diagnosis, men can suffer severe psychological distress with an increased risk of suicide. So therefore, sensitive interventions which deal with the subject are really called for. And there's a need to develop culturally sensitive interventions to enhance knowledge and understanding of prostate cancer in African Caribbean men. So our project was part of a much bigger project called Towards a Better Understanding of the Poor Diagnostic Outcomes of Prostate Cancer in African Caribbean Men. This was importantly, I have to mention the funder, importantly funded by the Nottingham City Clinical Commissioning Group. And its aims were to understand the barriers to presentation, to offer patient support and promotion of well-being and engagement, and developing applications which promote relevant health behaviours in both undiagnosed and diagnosed men. So we came up with a technical solution in our research team. So this is a game that provides not only information, but risk assessment based on a profile of the men during gameplay. The game actually elicits responses from the user on things like age, ethnicity, family history, if there's a history of prostate cancer in the family, and also their urinary symptoms based on the IPSS score. So we have several levels to the game, and each of these levels collects information in real time from the men. And based on that information, that really alters the game flow in the game to give very personalized and targeted feedback which is personal to that person. This is actually based on rules in the games that we've developed with urologists working in the game, and the information that the men present, the rules reason with the information that the men present and provides personalized feedback, and that's the mechanic of the game. And we've worked with urologists to really work out what those rules should be, and Georgina herself. And really, we don't actually want to flood healthcare services. We don't want everybody going to see their GP. We just want to target symptomatic men, the guys at higher or heightened risk. So it's an intelligent game. However, we work in a lab. None of us are actually African Caribbean. So it's really important that we develop with the community and that we do co-design. That's essential. I come from a HCI background where I look at co-design and participatory design, so that's what we must do. And the co-design is essential to help us look at things like perceptions of prostate cancer, risk factors, and also address the concerns about the various medical tests. But I'd like to introduce Rose Thompson to the stage, who is head of BME Cancer Communities, to talk about why the community should be the voice of healthcare messages, and Royden as well from FAB.
Good afternoon, everyone. I couldn't do this without the men. I've got Royden here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Royden, my name is, I work with a charity called FAB, and I'm the chairman, which is Friends and Brethren, which is a prostate cancer support group.
And we've got Elijah Israel sitting in the audience, who is our prostate cancer ambassador, and Manly Goods, who is a member of Friends and Brethren as well. And I just wanted Royden to come up because I think it's really important to understand that it takes the community to do this. And even though I'm director of BME Cancer Communities and we co-founded and initiated Friends and Brethren, they're the ones who've made it into a registered charity. And it is now raising prostate cancer awareness. You've had a conference, haven't you, as well?
That's right, that's right. I think where we sort of struggle, as David says, we're trying to get the men, the black men, to just go and have a test. And we find it really, really difficult because men in general don't like to go to the doctors. Now, when you're talking about prostate cancer, and he says to a BME gentleman, would you like to go and have your blood test? Or you might have to have a rectal examination. As soon as you mention the word rectal examination, there is this thing about, you know, I don't want to go to the doctors because I don't want to be messed about from the rear end. So therefore, we have a problem with the black men actually going to get tested. And
can I just ask, why do you think the game's important then?
Well, the game is very important because they could actually simulate the game in their own time. They don't have to speak to anybody, they don't have to be personalized to anybody. They could be at home, in the bedroom, and think, well, I'm going to see where I come on this game, whether I'm a high risk, low risk. So from the game perspective, it's personal to them, but they don't have to involve anybody else. So from that fact, they could go to the doctors or go and get tested without even speaking to anybody. And the game is so important, and that makes life so much easier for men. And by the way, Dr. Sarah there, she is one of the ladies who actually interviewed. Sarah, do you want to just stand up, please?
Thank you.
Sarah sort of interviewed the men to get all the statistics. And when I took Sarah down to the Afro-Caribbean Center, she was like petrified because there's all these black men there surrounding Sarah. But you know, after about 10 minutes, she got them really eating out the palm of her hands.
Thank you, Royden. Just to finish off, I've only got about 5 minutes. I think you can see there, you know, the findings from a report I did called Hear Me Now actually showed that these men had higher risk, 2 to 3 times higher, and in Nottingham, nearly 3 times more likely to die from prostate cancer. We talk about that in the group, that's why I can talk about it here. So we needed an urgent intervention that actually reached men who had low literacy levels as well, that they could just have some fun with as well. We have actually used the African Caribbean patois language, and we already had a character called Miss Patty Dumplin, who had been very successful on a Hearts and Minds project. So we deliberately used the patois language. Now, some people may find that they don't understand it. And when we showed it to some people, they thought, well, it would work against the African Caribbean community. But can I just say, it really doesn't. Using the language, using what goes around on YouTube in their language actually has been very, very successful. So that's why it's been chosen. So, and the team came to the New Art Exchange. We had, how many men did we have there that day?
29. We
actually took the game to 29 men, even though Fab had been involved, Friends and Brethren, in developing it. The team came and had, we were there for a couple of hours, weren't we? And evaluated it within the community again. And we're doing the same. So it is suitable for the community. It might not suit everybody because they don't understand the Patois language. But these men are at risk, and it was really important to develop something that actually fits them. So I think, you know, we had some concerns when we showed it to people who didn't understand the African Caribbeans. I got something from YouTube about Adam and Eve the other day, and it was Adam and Eve in Patois. Eve asking Adam what he wanted for breakfast,